thank you for taking out time, of course, sharing your analysis, providing perspective on what's taking place in these very, very crucial issues in the United States of America. On that note, viewers, we're tracking further updates. So we're now learning that in a meeting at the White House, US President Donald Trump has defended Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, insisting that he knew nothing about the 2018 murder of journalist Jamal Khashoggi. Trump's comments contradict a US intelligence report from 2021, which concluded that the Crown Prince had approved the operation that led to Khashoggi's death at the Saudi consulate in Istanbul in Turkey. While the Crown Prince called Khashoggi's death a huge mistake, he denied any involvement. The murder, of course, shocked the world. It sparked a diplomatic crisis between the US and Saudi Arabia, and Trump's comments have come in despite international condemnation and a UN investigation linking high-level Saudi officials, including the Crown Prince, to the killing. The case, of course, remains controversial, with critics accusing the Saudi government of obstructing any meaningful accountability. With us on the broadcast is Mr. Raymond Vickery, International Affairs expert, former U.S. Assistant Secretary of Commerce, joining us from Washington, D.C. Thank you so much for taking our time speaking to us on NewsX World. We do remember what took place in 2018 at the Saudi consulate in Istanbul. Then in 2021, a report was released by the United States, an intelligence report that concluded that the Crown Prince had approved the operation. A journalist today raised the question in the White House while the press briefing was taking place, the joint press briefing between Donald Trump and Mohammed bin Salman. And what was interesting was Donald Trump's reaction. The reporter had identified themselves as someone from a mainstream news channel, and Trump outrightly called the reporter a fake news peddler. What do you make of Trump's reaction? Of course, he was put in a spot, but was that reaction really justified?
Well, thanks very much for having me. You know, in order to build peace and prosperity, to wage it, you must wage it like you wage a war. You have to have a strategy. You have to have partners, and you have to have values. The reaction of President Trump to bringing the Crown Prince into the Oval Office shows really that President Trump has jettisoned each of these fundamentals to waging peace and prosperity in favor of a very transactional approach of what's in it for me immediately in regard to the transaction. The denial really of any responsibility by the prince, of course, is not credible in face of the determination of the security agencies, and President Trump's brushing it off and saying that there is no responsibility shows that the whole underpinning of democratic values, values which entail the rule of law, have been jettisoned in favor of the approach of transaction. Even more distressing, of course, are the myriad deals, financial deals that his company, his family is doing with Saudi Arabian companies and even the agencies of the government itself. $2 billion to his son-in-law, Jared Kushner. And of course, this has to be seen as an influence on the public policy towards Saudi Arabia, perhaps as much as any national security interest. So it's a very, very distressing development, but it is of one with the whole Trump administration's approach to international affairs. And one can only hope that other great democracies like India in Western Europe, Japan, South Korea will not simply become more cynical about the United States and its president, but will adhere to values and try to build peace and prosperity by having strategies, partners, and underlying approaches that show that democracy is still a factor in international affairs for nations who are ruled by people rather than by kings or dictators.
Indeed, sir, requesting you to stay on with us. Speaking of the deals itself, Donald Trump and his administration has announced plans to sell F-35 stealth fighter jets to Saudi Arabia. The sale is part of a larger security package that would strengthen Saudi Arabia's military capabilities in the Middle East. The deal was originally linked to normalizing relations between Israel and Saudi Arabia. However, US President Donald Trump indicated that the jet sale will proceed independently without any immediate agreement on relations with Israel. Now, if the deal is completed, Saudi Arabia would become the first Arab nation to receive fifth-generation American fighter jets. Now, the sale still requires US government's review and congressional approval, and according to experts, it could potentially shift regional military balance towards Saudi Arabia. Previously, the UAE, Saudi Arabia's neighbor, agreed to buy F-35 fighter jets and normalize relations with Israel, but that deal, of course, fell through during former US President Joe Biden's administration over concerns about China and operational restrictions. It is important to note that Saudi Arabia remains the largest buyer of American weapons in the Middle East with this $142 billion deal. The country is also very strategically keeping future normalization with Israel separate from the jet purchase. Meanwhile, Israel has, of course, expressed concerns over the sale. Former Israeli military officials continue to warn that allowing Saudi Arabia to acquire F-35s could impact security dynamics in the region. Still with us on the broadcast is Mr. Raymond Vickery. Speaking of the delicate geopolitical balance of power in the Middle East, how is this likely to impact Israel? Because up until now, Israel has been the only country to receive the F-35 fighter jets. We've seen them being operated in the 12-day war between Israel and Iran. Their efficacy over there was witnessed as well.
Well, it seems to me that it underlines the lack of strategy and a coalition approach to trying to wage peace in the Middle East. And what happens with the F-35 deal is basically a transaction. President Trump believes that if he can secure billions of dollars for F-35s, that somehow he has won in a transaction, and that adds to his stature and his greatness. That's absurd, of course. You can't look at this in a vacuum. Saudi Arabia has recently signed a deal with Pakistan. How does that fit in with U.S. interest in building peace, particularly in view of the strong relationship between the two largest democracies in the world, the U.S. and India? How does this sale fit with the idea of bringing peace by dealing with Israel in regard to Gaza? There is a discontinuity in all of these. The only constant is that President Trump feels that he is treated as royalty by the Saudi Arabians, that the Saudi Arabian government promotes his family economic interest, and that it's sort of a one king to another king approach to international affairs, which should have gone out certainly in the 20th century, after we saw what happens when you have this approach in terms of leading to international hostilities and war. So it's a very short-sighted approach. It's one which does not augur well. And along with this designation of a major non-NATO status to Saudi Arabia, how does that fit in with any strategy? It is not clear at all. So once again, this is showing a transactional approach in international affairs as opposed to a relationship and cooperative approach among partners, which is really at variance with what the United States has been doing for the last 80 years.
Indeed, sir, requesting you to, of course, stay on, because you've, of course, pointed out the incongruence as a part of this particular deal. The Saudi Park angle as well, the sort of a defense deal we've seen these two countries inked, the question on Saudi Arabia joining the Abraham Accords, and of course the very obvious sort of deal maker projection that Donald Trump seems to be making time and again. There is another aspect, Iran. Do you think the Trump administration has considered this when going ahead with its deal with Saudi Arabia, to sort of use it as, an element to counterbalance against Iran?
Well, I assume that he believes that he will have support from Saudi Arabia with Iran, because they have been adversaries for some time. But it is not clear at all that that is the case. The prince brought with him a letter from Iran. The transactional approach which the administration has taken encourages the Saudi Arabians to also take just a transactional approach. And so if the United States looks at this as what's in it for me immediately, you can rest assured that the Saudis are doing the same thing with Iran. So here again, it takes a strategy, and it takes a coalition partnership. It can't be just a one-off transaction with Saudi, which is going to accomplish anything in regard to Iran. It has to include other partners in Europe, Israel, across the board, in order to really make an impact. So once again, this is a very short-sighted justification for a transactional approach which benefits the president and his family immediately, but is in the longer run really not in the interest of the United States of America and its traditional leadership role as a leader of the free world.
Indeed, sir. With that, I'd like to thank you for taking out time, of course, putting all of that into perspective for our viewers. On that note, we're tracking some information coming in from Texas. The American Civil Liberties Union of Texas has hailed a federal judge's order as a win for religious freedom after Judge Orlando L. Garcia issued a preliminary injunction requiring certain Texas public school districts to remove Ten Commandments displays. The order comes after a lawsuit challenging the constitutionality of a Texas state law mandating public schools to display the Ten Commandments, a requirement that has triggered ongoing legal battles. In the latest victory in a series of legal challenges to laws requiring public schools to display these commandments, Arkansas and Louisiana have similar laws, and legal challenges to these measures have also produced court rulings favorable to the ACLU. Now, the Texas law is signed by Republican Governor Greg Abbott. It was signed back in June. It's being contested by families who claim that it violates the Establishment Clause of the First Amendment of the U.S. Constitution. We're shifting our focus to a grim report now released by the World Health Organization. A new WHO report reveals that nearly a third of all women globally have experienced intimate partner or sexual violence, with 840 million women affected at some point in their lives. WHO Chief Tedros has called the lack of progress in combating this widespread issue a global injustice, stating that 263 million of these women have suffered sexual violence. Despite efforts, the persistence of gender-based violence remains a serious challenge worldwide, underscoring the need for stronger action and support systems to protect women from abuse. Listen in.
A new report from WHO estimates that 840 million women have faced violence at least once in their lifetime, including 263 million who have suffered sexual violence. These numbers have changed little in 20 years.
The results highlight a tragic reality for women and girls worldwide, as I say, in almost essentially every community. Almost 1 in 3 women globally have suffered intimate partner violence, sexual violence, from a non-partner or both at least once in their lives. Just think of that figure, 1 in 3 women. The impacts of violence go further than the women, affecting the health and well-being of their children, their families, their communities, and of course, costing millions in the economy.
Well, viewers, due to paucity of time, it's a wrap on America 360. We will continue tracking these updates very, very closely.